My mother is dying a painful death, and it has everything and nothing to do with COVID-19. In a piece for The Atlantic detailing the ways in which the coronavirus seems to be hitting Black people the hardest, Ibram X. Kendi wrote, "Sometimes racial data tells us something we don't know. Other times, we need racial data to confirm something we already seem to know." My mother is a living example of what we already know about race, class, and suffering.
Heartfelt
She's
short
not
was
in
so
an elder
well
care
done.
facility
It
nor a
recounts the
hospital.
true story of a Black
She has
American
not
woman
been
narrating
most
how her
stable.
mother was dying during COVID-19. The film delivers a heartbreaking commentary on how many Black Americans, including her mother, did not get the proper medical support during COVID-19 and how she was diagnosed of a deathly disease far too late. The film effectively used her mom's voicemail messages at the top and bottom of the film, in addition to lots of family photos during better days and also shots of her mom's ailing. The repeated phrase, "nothing or everything to do with COVID-19, really hit home. Excellent film.
Wow, what a beautiful and powerful video essay that was. The composition of the narration was just so gorgeous. The writing in it, the images, the poetry, the pure emotion of the testimony and the delivery. What an amazing tribute to a loved one, and what a powerful way to convey the frustration and the anger and the helplessness that must have gone into this whole experience. Thanks for sharing. Like I say, it was just so beautiful. I'm really glad that I saw this, and I hope more people do. Yeah, very, very strong.
I thought this was really, really powerful. I loved how they put everything together, starting with the voicemail and then kind of going from there. I thought it was just a really great, like, opening, like, it set the tone right away with the voicemail. And then going from that to kind of explaining more and more and more. And also like the quote of that she starts with right after that, after the voicemail of like, my mother's dying a painful death and it has everything to do with COVID and it has nothing to do with COVID. Immediately, again, like you're just so like intrigued by what she means by that. And I just think how it was set up was so powerful, and the message itself needs to be like an impactful, powerful message. So I really like how they kind of set it all up, because it's obviously a very serious, very like somber message that should be taken seriously. It should have an impact. It should feel heavy. And that's exactly how it does. So I like that they were really able to carry that all the way through.
I had to pause this film on multiple times when I was watching it, simply because every scene, every moment is like a gut punch, you know. It's a COVID-19 film that's not about COVID-19. It's about grief and loss and the ways in which this pandemic has really hurt and targeted the people who are already the most vulnerable and at risk of our community. The film ends with this a voice mail recording of the narrator's mother, and it just feels so close and intimate. You almost want to like pull away from the screen, because it's just, you feel like you're right there with her as she talks about the slow and uncommon demise of her mom and how hard it is to receive the medical treatment that she needs in order to maintain and, you know, treat her condition. And then the narration as well, I just feel like she's almost whispering in my ear at certain points. Not like a very quiet whisper, but it's very much like a very intimate and very close feeling, auditory wise. And I felt like it really drove home the overall message of the piece. In some ways, this film is in some ways, this film is a final testament to a mother's life and legacy, but it's also extremely personal perspective on the pandemic in a sea of various opinion articles, and everyone has a perspective on the pandemic. This one is extremely personal and really seemed to resonate a lot with me.
I loved it. It's so emotional, showcasing a very deep, profound story of grieving. It is, yeah, totally deep and painful. It is outstandingly honest. You listen to it, you watch it, and you imagine yourself in the situation, and you can immediately relate. It is a story as well of rooted racism and discrimination, and once again, it just exacerbated by the pandemic, and again, making the gaps even longer, larger, more extreme, and unavoidable. So I love this title. It is very poetic. The recount of facts and the pain in the words is just excruciatingly painful and a work of art. It is a great homage for her mom, and I'm glad I watched
It's a
it.
short but extremely impactful film dealing with the way that racial injustice in the United States has intersected with COVID, the way that a lot of people who were already underserved, who were already dealing with systemic racism and discrimination, were made even more vulnerable during COVID. And there was kind of a poetic or like repetitive, sort of rhythmic, almost rhythmic quality to the voiceover that I think, for me, it sort of reflected the phases of grief, because my experience with grief is that we talk about different phases, but they're not linear. That often one aspect of grief will surface and then it'll go back down, and then it'll surface again and it'll go back down, and kind of some of the same ideas or same thoughts will kind of ruminate again and again through your head as you cycle through all of your feelings about losing someone. And I think this film captured that essence really well, particularly the complexity of losing someone when that death happens in a greater context of pandemic, and in also the macro context, again, of social injustice, and the way that had such a personal and serious effect on this family and the experience of losing their mother. So very impactful film, very, the shots were black and white. So there was sort of a simplicity to the visuals that I think for me just made it even more emotionally evocative to really understand the story and the situation. And I sort of felt like the way that the words zoomed in and kept saying, this has everything to do, this has nothing to do, this has everything to do. It was sort of like zooming in to the micro and zooming back out to the macro and zooming in and back out again. So yeah, very magnetic film, very evocative and impactful.
This is a very, very, very good piece, very well done, very, very sad, very tragic. It's very sad to see this story about this daughter, this family losing their mother, and having to do it at a distance, because of the quarantine, because of the pandemic. And there's so much irony in the title and in the recurrence of what she says about everything, nothing. Every time she says either of those words, each word has 100 different meanings, from, what she's telling us here. There's, at the root of it, a racial inequality issue that they're having to deal with the medical situation. And then there's the world situation with COVID, but then that's not really the whole thing. It's really her health problems and, and the social inequality and so on. It's just cyclical, So it's a good way to pointing out systemic problems, racial injustice problems, as well as healthcare problems. And there's so much in this. It's really well done. The voiceover is very beautiful. It's well written and very well performed. It's really more a spoken word, art piece. It's not just common narration, very well done. So this is a beautiful piece. I hope it gets out there. I hope the message gets out there, and I hope it makes a difference.